Hello, and welcome back to Haunted Drift Horror. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into haunted realms filled with pure horror, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1. It all began in February. I keep thinking maybe that matters. February is already a hard month. The sky stays gray for days, the sun feels weak when it does come out, and everything outside looks dead or tired. It is the kind of month where people start looking for answers, even when nothing is really wrong, or maybe especially when something is wrong, but they do not know how to say it. My dad was a good man. I need that to be clear before I tell the rest of this. He was not cruel. He was not someone who scared us before all of this happened. He was the kind of father who remembered what snacks I liked, who fixed broken drawers before anyone asked, who warmed up the car for my mom on freezing mornings. He loved us. I still believe that. I have to believe that because if I do not, then everything that happened becomes even worse. After his mother died 2 years ago, he changed. Not in a loud way. He did not break things. He did not scream. He did not cry in front of us. He just became quiet. Too quiet. There was a kind of emptiness around him that scared me more than tears would have. He would sit at the kitchen table with the coffee gone cold in front of him, staring at nothing. My mom and I tried to talk to him, but he would smile and tell us he was fine. He was not fine. We knew he was not fine. But we did not know what to do with that kind of grief. So when he found those online forums last winter, I was actually relieved at first. They were wellness communities, full of people talking about sleep, food, exercise, nervous system health, light exposure, and all those things that sound strange, until someone explains them in a calm voice. My dad started caring about himself again. He went for walks. He stretched in the living room. He stopped eating junk at night. He went to bed earlier. He seemed excited. And after so many months of silence, excitement felt like a miracle. At breakfast, he would tell me and my mom about what he had been reading. He talked about circadian hygiene, like it was something everyone should know about. He said modern humans had destroyed their natural sleep cycles. He said our eyes were made for firelight, moonlight, and starlight, not for glowing screens and bright white bulbs. He hated the cold blue light from phones, laptops, and LED lights. He said most houses were lit like hospitals now, and our bodies were suffering because of it. To be honest, some of it made sense. That is the part people do not warn you about. They do not tell you that strange things can start with something reasonable. They start with a small change that even seems healthy. They start with something that makes you say, okay, maybe he has a point. Oh, the first habit was showering in the dark. He had read that artificial light at night could ruin melatonin. And he said the bathroom was one of the worst places because people use bright lights right before bed. So he put tiny night lights in the bathroom and asked us not to turn on the main light when we showered at night. It was annoying, but not terrible. I did not need to read shampoo bottles every time I washed my hair. My mom rolled her eyes, but she went along with it too. And the strange thing is, my sleep actually got a little better. Maybe it was because of the lower light. Maybe it was because I stopped scrolling as much before bed. I do not know. But it made the next change easier to accept. Then he wanted no screens after sunset. That caused more arguments. My mom liked watching TV after work. I liked my phone and my shows and texted friends. We did not think it was fair that his new lifestyle had to become our lifestyle, too. At first, my mom told him exactly that. She said we loved him, but we were not going to live like monks just because some people on a forum told him screens were bad. The worst part was that he did not fight back. If he had yelled, maybe we would have pushed harder. But he was gentle about it. He said he understood. He said he was not trying to control us. He said he would just stay in rooms without screens after sunset, and we could keep doing what we wanted. He said it with this sad little smile, like he did not want to be a burden, and that made us feel guilty. After a while, my mom and I started using screens less at night, just so he would stay with us. We played cards sometimes. We talked more. We ate dinner slower. We sat in the living room with warm lamps instead of the TV. It felt almost nice. It felt like maybe he had accidentally fixed something in our family. Who could have guessed that phones and streaming shows had been keeping us apart? That is how it continued. One small change after another. Nothing happened all at once. He changed every bulb in the house to the lowest Kelvin he could find. He explained Kelvin to us like we had asked. He said lower Kelvin meant warmer light, more like sunset, more natural for the human body. The bulbs made every room look orange and old, like we were living inside a faded photograph. I hated doing homework under them, but I could live with it. Then he stopped turning lights on unless he absolutely had to. That was when it started to bother me more. Not scare me yet, just irritate me. My mom was annoyed too. He would move through the house in dimness like he was proud of how little he needed to see. But he still used his laptop during the day, which felt hypocritical. He kept the brightness all the way down and wore blue light blocking glasses. But still, he was always on that laptop, reading those forums, saving posts, taking notes, and talking to people who seemed to care more about darkness than health. At dinner, his conversations changed. They became less about sleep and more about darkness itself. He started saying firelight was not as natural as people thought. He said even candles were a compromise. He said our ancestors had once known real dark, total dark, the kind you could not find in modern cities or even in most countryside homes. He talked about caves. He talked about the womb. He talked about places where the body stopped fighting the world and began to blend into it. One night, while we were eating, he leaned back in his chair and said the nervous system could only truly reset in total darkness. He said real darkness was not empty. It was full. It held you. It softened your senses until you no longer felt the hard edge between yourself and everything else. He said the body could balance itself there, could synchronize with something older than thought. Then he said very quietly, "And you go back." My mom and I looked at each other. Neither of us answered. That was the moment I should have said something. Anything. I should have asked him what he meant. I should have told my mom that this was not normal anymore. I should have closed his laptop and made him look at me. But I did not. I just sat there, uncomfortable and confused, while he smiled at his plate, like he had said something beautiful. 2 weeks ago, I came home from school and found my bedroom window covered in black contractor bags. He had done it while I was gone. At first, I thought something had happened to the window. Then I saw the tape. Thick black plastic had been stretched across the glass from the inside. Every edge was sealed. The room was dark, even though it was still afternoon outside. My dad came in behind me, proud and excited, like a kid showing off a school project. "Cassie, look," he said. "No gaps." He pointed at the seams. He had worked so carefully that not even a pinprick of daylight came through. He pulled out a little device from his pocket and held it up. A lux meter. He told me it measured light. "I'm getting a 2, he said. A 2. That's incredible. The guys on the forums are going to love this." He was already taking pictures. Already posting. I should have screamed then. I should have torn the bags down in front of him. Instead, I just stood there while he smiled at his phone. I told myself it was only plastic. I told myself I could take it down later. I told myself he was grieving and strange, not dangerous. 3 days ago, I came downstairs in the morning and tried to turn on the kitchen light. Nothing happened. I flipped the switch again. Nothing. At first, I thought the bulb had burned out. Then I looked up and saw the fixture was empty. I went from room to room. Every light bulb in the house was gone. Every single one. The warm orange bulbs, the bathroom bulbs, the hallway bulbs, the little lamp bulbs. Even the bulb inside the oven was missing. Even the tiny light in the fridge was gone. And I still do not understand how he reached it without breaking something. Outside in the trash bin, I found the bag. It was full of shattered glass and twisted metal ends. All the bulbs had been broken. I came back inside shaking with anger. He was sitting at the table with his laptop open. The screen dimmed so low it was almost black. His blue light glasses were on. His face was calm. Before he could say a word, I lost it. I screamed at him. I screamed so loudly my throat hurt. I cried and asked him why he was doing this to us. I begged him to stop. I told him to please just be normal again. I told him I wanted my dad back. I told him to stop staring at that stupid laptop while I was talking to him. Thank God my mom had already left for work. I do not know if it would have been better or worse if she had been there. My dad looked at me like I had slapped him. Not angry, hurt, sad. He looked normal in that moment, and somehow that made it harder. He was not wild-eyed. He was not laughing. He looked like a man whose daughter had misunderstood something he had been proud of. Then he closed the laptop. He said he was sorry. He said he had gone too far. He said he would fix everything. He promised he would put the house back the way it had been. He hugged me, and I let him. He smelled like coffee and laundry soap, just like always. For a second, I believed him. I went to school worried about him all day. I was worried about my mom, too. Part of me truly believed I would come home and find the house bright again, with clear windows, working lights, and maybe the TV on too loud in the living room. I imagined my dad apologizing. I imagined my mom standing with her arms crossed, angry but relieved. During the day, I tried calling my mom. I wanted to warn her about the bulbs before she came home. I wanted to tell her that Dad had promised to fix it, but that something was wrong. She did not answer. Every call went to voicemail. At first, I thought she was busy at work. Then I thought maybe her phone was dead. I kept telling myself there were normal reasons. On the drive home, the sun was low and bright. It hurt my eyes so much that I had to squint the whole way. That scared me. My eyes had become too used to darkness. I remember thinking the light felt violent, too open, too exposed. I thought about how my dad had said darkness could make you lose your sense of your body. I hated myself for understanding what he meant. I wanted to crawl under my blankets and let the dark press around me until the tight knot in my stomach disappeared. When I got home, my mom's car was already in the driveway. The house looked normal from the outside, except for the windows. Every window was flat black. No reflection. No curtains visible. No glow. Just dead black squares in the walls of a normal family house. It looked like a bad dream. I opened the front door and left it open behind me, hoping daylight would pour in. It did not. The darkness inside seemed too thick. The light from outside stopped only a few feet in, like it had hit something solid. "Dad?" I called. "Mom?" No answer. I went to the front window first. I was angry again. I wanted to rip down the contractor bags and let the whole world back into the house. I dug my nails into the corner where the plastic should have been, but I scraped something hard and rough instead. I turned on my phone flashlight. He had coated the inside of the windows with something black and thick. It looked like truck bed liner, the rough spray-on kind. It had dried in heavy layers over the glass. This was not plastic anymore. This was not something I could peel away. My anger turned cold. I turned from the window and shined my phone light into the hallway. The beam looked weak in the dark. Before all of this, a flashlight would have felt helpful, safe. But living in that house had changed the way darkness felt. The light did not feel like protection. It felt like an intruder. It felt like I was carrying something that did not belong there. "Dad?" I called again. "Mom?" Still nothing. I checked upstairs first. I do not know why. Maybe because I wanted to avoid the basement. I went room by room calling their names. My parents' bedroom was empty. My bedroom was empty. The bathroom, closets, hallway, attic crawl space, all empty. The house was too quiet. Not just quiet like no one was home. Quiet like sound was being swallowed. When I came back down near the kitchen, I stopped. The basement door was open. I had not checked the basement yet. I stood there for a long moment, pointing my phone light at the open doorway. The stairs disappeared into blackness. My mouth went dry. "Dad?" I said. "Mom? Please answer me." Nothing. I stepped closer. The basement stairs led down to the unfinished part of the house. Bare wooden studs, concrete floor, storage boxes. The furnace in the corner. I remember thinking I could hear the furnace ticking, but that made no sense. My dad had already complained about the pilot light before. He said even that tiny flame was a problem. He had shut it off more than once. So maybe I imagined the sound. Maybe I just needed there to be some normal house noise. I went down slowly. The basement was bigger than it felt from upstairs. My phone light moved over boxes, old paint cans, tools, a broken chair, rolled up rugs, things we never used but never threw away. At the far end was a small room my dad had always talked about finishing. He wanted to turn it into a workshop one day, or maybe a storage room. It was just concrete and dust. At the back of it, there was a shallow alcove where the previous owners had once kept a safe built into the wall. That room was pitch black. I stood at the doorway and shined my light in. I did not step inside at first. Something about the room felt wrong, heavy, pressing. Like the air in there had a weight to it. I aimed my phone light toward the back wall, toward the alcove, but the beam did not seem to reach it. I keep thinking about that part. I keep getting stuck there. The light went into the room, but it did not come back right. It was like the alcove was deeper than the house itself. Like there was more space back there than the basement could possibly hold. Then my father's voice came from inside. "Cassie." It was calm. It sounded close. I could not see him. I need to be exact about this because the police asked me 4 different times, and I gave the same answer each time. I was pointing my phone light directly into that room. I could see the concrete floor. I could see the walls near the entrance. I could see dust floating in the beam. There was no one there. "Cassie," my father said again, "Mom's in here with me. Come here." I started crying immediately. I do not mean a few tears. I broke. My whole body started shaking. I told him to come out. I begged him. I said I would take him anywhere he wanted. A doctor, a hotel, Grandma's old church, anywhere. I said I would stop fighting him about the lights. I said I would cover every window myself if that was what he wanted. I said I was sorry. I said, "Please, Dad, please just come out." His voice stayed calm. "If you come in here," he said, "everything will go back to how it was before it all began." I asked him what he meant. No answer. I asked him how. Still nothing. I stood at the doorway, crying into the dark, asking the empty room to explain itself. The alcove did not answer. My father did not answer again. My mother never spoke at all. Then I walked in. I wish I could tell you I ran away. I wish I could tell you I was smart enough to call the police from the basement stairs. But I walked into that room. He said my mom was there. He said everything could go back. What else was I supposed to do? I kept my phone light up and moved it across every corner. The room was empty. There was no deep black space in the wall. No impossible tunnel. No darkness larger than the house. The alcove was just a shallow dent in the concrete, not even a foot deep. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. There was no father, no mother, just concrete, dust, the cold smell of the basement, and my own breathing coming too fast. I searched the whole house after that, both floors, every closet, under every bed, behind furniture, the attic crawl space again, the backyard, the garage. I checked the basement room 3 more times. I stared at the alcove until my eyes watered. I screamed my parents' names until my voice broke. Then I called the police. They were kind. I have to say that. They did not laugh at me. They did not treat me like I was wasting their time, at least not at first. 6 officers searched the house. They had real flashlights, big ones that cut through the dark better than my phone ever could. They brought a K9. They went through every room, every closet, every corner of the basement. They checked the windows, the doors, the yard. They found nothing. No sign of forced entry. No sign of a struggle. No blood. No broken furniture. No hidden space behind the basement wall. No sign of my dad. No sign of my mom. They asked about the windows. I watched their faces while they looked at the black coating over the glass. I could see them silently deciding what kind of man sprays truck bed liner over every window in his house. I could also see them wondering what kind of daughter waits so long before calling for help. I tried to explain. I told them it had not started like this. I told them my dad had seemed better at first, not worse. I told them about his grief, about the forms, about the sleep routines, about the bulbs in the darkness. I told them he was not a bad man. I told them he had hugged me that morning and promised to fix things. That is the part I cannot explain, and that is why I am writing this here instead of just waiting for a news story or a police update. I wanted to show them the forums. I went to my dad's laptop. I knew exactly what I had seen before. The pages had black backgrounds with deep wine-red text boxes. I remembered the layout. I remembered the words people used. I remembered the strange way they talked about darkness, like it was a place you could enter, not just the absence of light, but the forums were gone. Not just logged out, gone. I checked his history. I searched the names I remembered. I searched phrases, keywords, anything that might bring them up. Nothing. It was like they had never existed. The officers looked at me with polite faces and said they would look into it. They took the laptop. I finished filing the report this evening. 2 missing persons, house searched and cleared. No known intruder, no explanation. That is everything. That is the whole thing from beginning to end, in the order it happened. I needed to write it down before doubt settled in too deeply. Before I started telling myself I had imagined pieces of it. Before the memory of his voice from that empty room became something my mind could soften or change. If you have just finished reading this, I want you to go back in your mind to the beginning. Back to where my dad was still only a grieving man trying to get healthy. Back to where the worst thing happening in our house was no Netflix after sunset. Back to where darkness still felt like sleep and rest, not a mouth opening under the floor. I want you to understand how easy it was to let it happen. Now I sleep in my car with the dome light on. I do not sleep well, but I sleep better than I do in a dark room. I keep lights on everywhere I go. I do not close my eyes in the shower. I do not sit in rooms without lamps. I do not trust shadows anymore. But I still think about what my dad said. I hate that I do, but I do. I think about the way he described darkness, not as empty space, but as a return, a womb, a place before memory, before the body knew where it ended, a place before the world had shape, before even the first light split everything apart. Going back to how it was before it all began. Some nights, I lie there under the weak yellow light of my car, staring at the roof. And I wonder what would have happened if I had walked into that room a little faster. I wonder if I would have seen them. I wonder if I would have reached them. I wonder if the dark closed before I got there. And the worst part is that sometimes, when I am tired enough and the light above me begins to feel thin, I wonder if my father was wrong about everything, or if he was right. Story 2. This happened a few months after my mom started dating a man named Greg. Before him, things between me and my mom were not perfect, but at least they felt normal. After Greg came into her life, everything started to change in small ways. She would go to his house whenever I stayed with my dad for the weekend, or when I made plans with my friends. Sometimes she went there to watch movies. Sometimes they had dinner together. Sometimes she stayed out late and came home acting like she was younger than she really was. Greg was not the worst person in the world. At least that was what I told myself at first. He was friendly enough when he wanted to be, and he tried to act like the cool boyfriend who could get along with his girlfriend's kid. But there was always something off about him. He told jokes that only he laughed at, and some of them were rude or offensive. He had the kind of humor where he would say something cruel, then look around like everyone else was supposed to laugh because he thought it was funny. If no one laughed, he would act like they were too sensitive. I never really liked him, but I also did not hate him. I mostly tried to stay out of his way. If my mom was happy, I thought maybe I could tolerate him. But then one day, she told me that Greg wanted to take both of us whale watching in June. The moment she said it, my stomach dropped. I told her right away that I did not want to go. I did not even try to hide how serious I was. I have thalassophobia. For anyone who does not know, that means I have a strong fear of deep bodies of water and the unknown things that live far below the surface. It is not just a small dislike of swimming pools or beaches. It is the kind of fear that makes my chest tighten when I look at pictures of dark ocean water. It makes my mind imagine the endless black space underneath, where something huge could be moving without anyone seeing it. My mom knew about it. She had known for years. She knew I hated deep water. She knew the ocean made me feel sick. She knew I could not relax when I was too close to it. But her love for Greg seemed stronger than her concern for me. No matter how many times I told her I did not want to go, she kept saying it would be good for me. She said I needed to get over it. She said it would be fun. She said Greg had already bought the tickets, and she did not want to disappoint him. In the end, she forced me to go. I was miserable before we even reached the docks. The whole car ride was quiet, at least on my side. Greg tried to talk to me a few times, probably because he wanted to look good in front of my mom. He asked if I was excited. He asked if I had ever seen a whale before. He made some stupid joke about getting eaten by Moby Dick. I either gave him short answers or did not answer at all. Every time I did that, my mom would look at me through the rearview mirror. It was not a worried look. It was the look parents give when they are angry, but cannot yell yet because someone else is around. It was the kind of look that said, "We are going to talk about this when we get home." After a 2-hour drive, we finally reached the place where the whale-watching boat was waiting. Greg bought 3 expensive tickets, while my mom stood beside him, smiling like this was some perfect family outing. I stood behind them with my hands in my pockets, staring at the water and trying not to think about how far out we were going. The boat was bigger than I expected, but once everyone boarded, it felt much smaller. There were 8 people in the group, including me, my mom, and Greg. The rest were other whale watchers who seemed excited and cheerful. They talked about cameras, sunscreen, and how lucky we might get if the whales came close. I hated how calm they all seemed. To them, the ocean was beautiful. To me, it looked like a giant mouth. The captain introduced himself as Dave. He was an older man with a weathered face and a faded hat. His assistant was a younger guy everyone called Jonesy. They both seemed experienced. And under different circumstances, maybe that would have made me feel better. But nothing could make me feel safe. Once the boat pulled away from the dock. As the docks grew smaller behind us, panic started rising in my chest. I watched the land shrink in the distance, and every second made me feel more trapped. The boat rocked with every wave, and each movement made my legs tense. I wrapped my arms around myself and tried to breathe normally, but I could not. My breaths became shallow. My heart beat so fast that it drowned out the voices around me. No one noticed at first. Everyone was too busy looking out at the water, hoping to see a whale. Then my mom grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. "Stop it," she hissed at me. Her voice was low but sharp. "You look like a freaking school shooter." I stared at her, shocked by how cruel she sounded. "I didn't even want to come on this trip," I said. "You made me." "I didn't think you were going to be this bad," she snapped. "Just try to have fun and stop embarrassing me." Then she let go of my arm and walked back toward Greg. I stood there for a moment, feeling angry and hurt at the same time. It was not the first time she had acted differently because of a boyfriend, but it still hurt. There is something painful about realizing the person who brought you into the world can make you feel like a problem instead of a person. About 30 minutes passed, and we still had not seen anything. No whales, no dolphins, no seals, not even a strange shape under the water. Just waves, sky, and endless blue. The group started to get restless. Some people complained quietly at first, then louder. One woman said they should get their money back if there were no whales. Another person said the company should have known where the whales were before taking people out. Captain Dave apologized and said, sometimes nature did not work on schedule. He tried to sound calm and professional, but I could tell he was a little nervous. He moved toward the controls and started the boat again, probably planning to take us to another spot. That was when we heard the sound. It came from underneath the boat. It was loud, wet, and horrible, like a machine slicing through thick meat. The sound made everyone freeze. The boat jerked, then stopped. Captain Dave tried to start it again, but the engine stalled. He tried once more. The same thing happened. Everyone went quiet. The captain looked confused. He leaned over the side of the boat, trying to see what the propeller had hit. The moment he looked down, his body went still. A few people noticed his reaction and looked too. Then I heard gasps. I did not want to look. Every part of me told me not to. But fear has a way of pulling your eyes toward the thing you are most afraid of. I stepped closer and looked over the side. At first I saw a dark shape under the water. It was huge, about the size of a jeep, and it was slowly rising toward the surface. Around it the water had turned red. The color spread outward in cloudy waves, drifting around the boat. Then the body surfaced. It was a whale calf, a sperm whale calf, or at least that was what someone said. It was dead. The propeller must have struck it, or that was what we all thought at first. Its body floated beside the boat in the red water, and the sight was so terrible that I turned away and threw up over the deck. Some of the women started crying. My mom clung to Greg, her face pale with horror. Captain Dave took off his hat and lowered his head. "Damn it," he muttered. Then he looked at Jonesy. "Can you check how badly the propeller is damaged before the sharks show up? I'm going to send an SOS to the Coast Guard." Jonesy nodded. "Aye, Captain." He went below deck and came back a few minutes later wearing a diving suit. The group murmured nervously as he prepared to enter the water. I could not believe anyone would willingly jump into that red ocean, especially with a dead whale calf floating beside the boat. But Jonesy did not hesitate. He slipped into the water and swam toward the stern. Before going under, he brushed his hand against the calf's body. It almost looked like he was apologizing to it. But even through his diving mask, I could see his expression change. He looked confused. Then he submerged. Captain Dave came back from sending the SOS and told us the Coast Guard was on its way. They would be there in about an hour. An hour. The group groaned, but I just sat down and pulled my knees to my chest. 1 hour in the open ocean felt like a lifetime. The boat rocked beneath me, and I tried to stare only at the deck. I did not want to look at the water. I did not want to think about the red cloud spreading around us. I did not want to imagine what might be attracted to the blood. A few minutes later, Jonesy came back up and climbed onto the boat. Captain Dave walked over to him. They spoke quietly, but I was close enough to hear. "How bad is it?" the captain asked. "The propellers are shredded," Jonesy said. Captain Dave frowned. "How the hell did they get shredded by a sperm whale calf?" "That's the thing," Jonesy replied. "I don't think it was the calf we hit." The captain stared at him. "What do you mean?" "When I went down to check, I brushed against the body," Jonesy said. "It felt wrong, so I took a better look. The calf is missing its lower half, and what's left of it is hollowed out." Captain Dave's eyes widened. He looked back toward the floating corpse. "Hollowed out? How could that happen?" Jonesy shook his head and scratched the back of his neck. Your guess is as good as mine. But I heard something down there, too. I think the parent is nearby. It sounded upset. I could hear this cry coming from somewhere. I've never heard anything like it. I didn't even know whales could make a sound that distorted. Listening to them made my skin crawl. The idea of something nearby, something crying in the deep, made the ocean around us feel even bigger and darker. I tried to tell myself it was just a whale, a grieving whale, a giant animal upset over its dead calf. But something about Jonesy's voice told me he did not believe that completely. A few minutes later, someone pointed and said the calf was sinking. At the same time, the propeller made another loud breaking sound. Everyone jumped. Captain Dave and Jonesy looked at each other. I thought you said it was broken, Captain Dave said. It was, Jonesy answered. I don't know how it's moving again. He grabbed his gear and headed back down. I'm going to check it again. He went back into the water. The propeller kept making that same horrible noise, again and again, like something was forcing it to move in short bursts. Then it stopped. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then Jonesy burst back through the surface in a panic. Help! He screamed. Help me! There's something... He never finished. Something yanked him underwater so fast that his shout was cut off in the middle. A big man from the group reacted before anyone could stop him. He jumped into the water to save Jonesy. People screamed. Captain Dave grabbed a life ring, but by then both men were gone beneath the surface. We waited. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. Then 30. They did not come back up. Everyone assumed sharks had arrived because of the whale carcass. It was the only explanation anyone could say out loud. Captain Dave cursed and threw his hat onto the deck. He pinched the bridge of his nose and looked like a man trying not to fall apart. There was nothing we could do. If anyone else jumped in, they would probably die too. All we could do was wait for the Coast Guard. 20 minutes passed after that. I tried to close my eyes. I thought maybe if I pretended to sleep, I could stop seeing the water in my mind. But there was no way to relax. Not after what had happened. Then I heard a tapping sound on the side of the boat. It was small at first. Not a normal tap, exactly. It sounded like something was trying to tap, but did not understand how much force to use. Like a child learning to knock on a door. I opened my eyes and held my breath. The tapping came again. I slowly moved toward the stern and looked over. The big man who had jumped in after Jonesy was there in the water. His arms were raised toward me like he wanted me to grab him. For 1 second, hope shot through me. I gasped and called for help. I reached down, but then I noticed something under him. At first, I thought it was just a shadow. A large, dark shape blending into the water. But then the shape shifted. It was not under him by accident. It was holding him up. It looked up at me. I froze. Its face moved beneath the surface, distorted by the waves. Its eyes were deep and sunken, so black they looked like empty holes in its skull. Its mouth had a heavy overbite, and sharp, uneven teeth stuck out in a jagged row. Its head was narrow and spear-shaped, attached to a long neck that moved like a snake. The rest of its body was a large, dark mass that seemed to disappear into the blue water around it. Then I realized something even worse. The man was missing his lower half. His upper body was not floating on its own. It was sitting over the creature's head like a mask or some horrible puppet. His torso looked hollow, stretched over the thing beneath him. I tried to scream, but before I could, I heard a low, broken voice. Help me, The man's mouth did not move. The voice sounded wrong. It was rough and distorted, like a radio station losing signal, and then finding it again. It was as if something was trying to copy human speech, but did not understand it yet. And it was not the big man's voice. It was Jonesy's voice. I screamed louder than I had ever screamed in my life. I fell backward and crawled away until I bumped into my mom and Greg. Greg grabbed my shoulders and tried to hold me still while I shook and fought against him. "There's something in the water," I cried. "There's something in the water." I dropped to my knees and began to hyperventilate. Captain Dave rushed to the side and looked overboard. "Oh my God," he shouted. "Quick, get a life preserver. This man is alive." I stared at him in confusion. Did he not see the creature? Did he only see the man's upper body? Maybe the water hid the rest from his angle. Maybe his mind refused to understand what he was looking at. Then the same voice came again. "Help. Help me." This time the mimicry sounded smoother, almost better practiced, but still wrong. It had the flat emptiness of a recording. The captain seemed too focused on saving a life to notice that the voice was not matching the motionless mouth. "You're all right, son," Captain Dave called. "Just grab a hold." The thing kept repeating the words. "Help. Help me." Then the tapping grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. Each hit became harder. The man's body bumped against the boat again and again. The captain leaned back. "Whoa! What the hell are you doing?" he shouted. Some members of the group moved forward to help, then stopped. Their faces changed as they understood what was happening. The creature was slamming the man's upper body into the boat. The soft tapping became heavy banging. Flesh tore. Blood sprayed against the side. "Help! Help me!" the creature kept saying. It was trying to lure us into the water. That was the moment I understood. It was using bodies like bait, like an anglerfish using its glowing lure in the dark to bring smaller fish close to its mouth. Except this thing was not glowing. It was using human voices, human faces, human suffering. Everyone rushed to the other end of the boat in panic. The banging continued for another minute, then stopped. For a moment, no one moved. Greg was the first to step toward the stern again. He moved slowly, trying to look brave. My mom whispered his name, but he did not stop. Then water exploded behind us. Something huge hit the other side of the boat. The force threw me off my feet. A large object struck me, and before I could understand what had happened, I was falling. I hit the ocean with two other whale watchers. Cold water swallowed me. The world turned blue and white. I sank beneath the waves, staring up at the sky as it twisted and rippled above me. My mind went blank with terror. I held my breath, not because I was prepared, but because fear locked my lungs shut. Everywhere I looked, there was only blue. Then the creature appeared. It came out of the deeper water like it had been created from the ocean itself. At first, it was just a blurry shape in the distance. Then it charged toward us with terrifying speed. It moved like a torpedo, its long neck stretched forward and its flippers driving it through the water. Jonesy's upper body was still attached to its head. But as the creature rushed forward, the force of the water pulled the corpse loose. Jonesy's body slipped away and drifted downward. As it turned in the water, I saw that it was hollow inside. The creature opened its jaws. I thought it was coming for me, but it shot past me and grabbed one of the whale watchers instead. Its teeth closed around him, and even underwater, I could hear his scream. It was muffled and bubbling, like his voice was trapped under a heavy blanket. There is something especially horrifying about hearing someone scream underwater. It does not sound human anymore. It sounds like fear being crushed. The other whale watcher did not hesitate. He swam for the surface as fast as he could. I followed him, kicking and clawing upward, while the scream below us grew softer and farther away. The creature dragged its meal into the deep. I broke through the surface and gasped for air. I tried to tread water, but panic made my body clumsy. I grabbed onto the other whale watcher, desperate for help. "Get off me!" he shouted, pushing me away. "Please," I cried, "please save me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." I was sobbing like a child. I could not control it. Tears, seawater, and snot ran down my face while I fought to stay above the waves. The man shoved me off and swam toward the boat by himself. A second later, he disappeared. Something pulled him straight down. No scream, no warning, just a splash, and then nothing. I screamed again because I knew I was next. Everyone on the boat was shouting for me to swim. They reached their hands toward me. My mom was the loudest of all, screaming my name in a way I had never heard before. For the first time that day, she sounded like a mother. In the distance, I heard a helicopter. The sound gave me a small burst of hope. I looked over and saw it approaching, red and bright against the sky. The Coast Guard had come. We were going to be saved. I forced myself to swim toward the boat. Every stroke felt weak. My clothes dragged me down, and the waves kept pushing against my face. But I kept going. I reached the side. Hands stretched down toward me. I raised my arm, then pain exploded through my foot. The creature's jaws clamped onto me and pulled me underwater. Bubbles burst from my mouth as I screamed. I kicked and twisted, trying to hit it, trying to grab anything, but the water slowed every movement. The creature shook its head violently. Its teeth dug deeper into my foot. I felt them scrape against bone. Blood poured out around me, turning the water red. I looked up through the surface. The helicopter had landed on the water near the boat. People were climbing aboard. For one terrible moment, I did not feel relief. I felt anger. It was unfair. It was unfair that I had been dragged onto this trip when I had begged not to go. It was unfair that this monster had found us by chance and killed people who had done nothing wrong. It was unfair that everyone else might get to go home while I died in the stomach of some impossible thing from the deep. I thought of my dad. I thought of my friends. I thought of all the normal things I had taken for granted. And I hated the ocean for taking them from me. My vision started to fade. I was losing air. My body felt heavy. I could not fight anymore. Then I heard a heavy impact above me, like something punching through the water. My sight was blurry, but I saw two figures dive down. One moved toward the creature. The other moved toward me. The next thing I remember is coughing up water. I was on the helicopter. A medic was over me, shouting something I could barely understand. My throat burned. My chest hurt. There was a tight band around my thigh, and my lower leg felt like it was on fire and missing at the same time. My mom was beside me. She held me close and cried, telling me she thought I had died. I was too weak to answer. Later, she told me what happened. Captain Dave and Greg had jumped into the water to save me. Captain Dave distracted the creature, while Greg grabbed me and brought me back to the surface. The captain did not make it. The creature must have taken him almost right away. Greg managed to get me onto the helicopter. But as soon as he climbed up after me, the creature shot its head out of the water, grabbed him around the torso, and dragged him back down. The pilots did not know what the creature was. They started the helicopter and lifted us into the air before it could damage the aircraft and leave us stranded again. My mother cried for Greg. 2 of the whale watchers cried for their friend who had been taken. I was fading in and out of consciousness, but before I passed out again, I looked down at the ocean. The creature raised its head from the water. Its mouth hung open like a moray eel. It made a low, grunting sound. Then the sound shifted. It changed slowly, like it was testing the shape of the noise. Then it made the sound of the helicopter. I woke up in a hospital room 2 days later. My dad was sitting beside my bed. When he saw my eyes open, his own eyes widened so much that I thought they might pop out of his head. He grabbed me and hugged me, crying harder than I had ever seen him cry. That was when I found out my leg had been amputated. The damage was too bad. The tissue was destroyed, and the doctors could not save it. My dad told me he had received a call about what happened, but the official story was different. They said the boat had hit a coral reef. They said some people fell overboard and were attacked by sharks. They left out the sea monster completely. My dad knew about my fear of the ocean. He knew I never would have chosen to go on that trip. When he found out my mom had forced me, he lost control for the first time in all the years he had known her. I do not know exactly what happened between them, and I did not ask for details. I only know he was furious in a way I had never seen before. After I was discharged from the hospital, I cut ties with my mother. I did not even let her visit me while I was recovering. I moved in with my dad, and I have lived with him since then. He actually cares about me. He listens when I say something is wrong. The last thing I heard about my mother was that she had become emotionally distant. I guess that can happen when you lose the person you love to some sea creature, and your own child refuses to see you, all within a few days. Part of me feels bad for her. Another part of me remembers how she looked at me on that boat, how she told me to stop embarrassing her, and I cannot make myself forgive her. I'm getting better with my prosthetic foot now. I still trip sometimes. My friends call me Whirlpool because of the way I spin when I fall, but I do not mind. They are joking because they love me, not because they want to hurt me. That makes a difference. You are probably wondering what that creature was. I wish I knew. I have searched online. I have looked at deep-sea creatures, prehistoric animals, whale parasites, unknown marine life, and old sea monster stories. Nothing matches it exactly. Some things come close in shape, but nothing explains the mimicry. Nothing explains the way it used bodies like bait. Nothing explains how it copied voices and sounds. My thalassophobia is worse now. Much worse. Before, I was scared of the ocean. Now, even showers and baths can make me cry if I stay in them too long. I know that sounds ridiculous to some people, but once you have felt teeth close around your foot under dark water, your mind does not care what is safe and what is not. Water becomes water. Depth becomes depth. Your body remembers even when you try to forget. People always say we have only explored a small part of the ocean. They say there could be thousands, maybe millions of unknown creatures still waiting to be discovered. Maybe that is true. Maybe what attacked us was just one of them. Maybe it came from some trench where sunlight never reaches. Maybe it was something ancient that should have stayed hidden, but it did not feel natural. It did not feel like an animal that belonged in our oceans. It felt wrong. It felt intelligent in a cruel way. It felt like it understood fear and used it. That is why I am writing this. I want to know what it was. More than that, I want to warn people who love the ocean. People who go sailing, fishing, diving, or whale watching without thinking twice. You may not believe me. You may say it was trauma, shock, or some kind of shark attack that my mind turned into a monster. I do not blame you if you think that. But I know what I saw. I know what pulled me under. I know what used dead men to call for help. I know what made the sound of a helicopter after watching one fly away. And I know one more thing. The ocean is not empty. It is listening. Story 3. I was 10 years old when the light in my grandparents' cellar first started turning on by itself at night. My father's parents lived in the house next to ours. Their home was old, worn down, and full of little problems that nobody seemed to fix anymore. The paint on the walls never matched. Some of the doors hung a little crooked. The wooden floors cried out every time someone walked across them, making long, sharp sounds like alley cats fighting behind the street. Still, it was a good house in its own way. It stayed warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and from my bedroom window I could see straight into my grandparents' yard. That window meant everything to me back then, because it let me know when Grandma was outside. I think every little boy loves his grandmother as long as she lets him. If she can handle the dirt on his shoes, the mud on his hands, and the noise he brings through the door, then she owns his heart. My grandma owned mine completely. She gave me snacks, hugged me like she had been waiting all day to see me, kissed my scraped knees, and somehow made every small pain feel like it was not so bad. Whenever I saw her moving around in the yard, I would rush out of our back door and run toward her as fast as my legs could carry me. I always slowed down at the last second before throwing my arms around her, because she would laugh and warn me that one day I was going to knock her right into next week. She smelled like dish soap, fresh laundry dried on the line, and the green tomatoes she grew in her little garden patch. She always told me I was getting taller. She said one day I would be so big that she would be the one who had to catch me. Her hair was white like silk, but she kept it long and straight instead of curling it the way many older ladies did at church. It made her seem younger somehow, like she still had a bit of wildness in her. She was funny, too. She was the only grown woman I ever knew who could bite into a sweet onion like it was an apple and laugh when everyone around her looked horrified. She also loved jokes. One time she asked me if I wanted to taste her coffee. I had never tried coffee before, so I said yes without thinking. I did not know she drank it black, with no sugar and no cream. The taste hit my tongue like burnt dirt, and I spat it all over the floor. Grandma laughed so hard she had tears in her eyes. Then she gave me candy as a peace offering, and I laughed too. Back then, bad taste never lasted long. Grandpa was different. He had an old red shed in the backyard, a place full of tools, engine parts, and the smell of oil. In warm weather, he would sit on the concrete step outside the shed and work on lawnmowers. Some belonged to neighbors who brought them over for repairs. Others he found near trash bins and decided they still had life left in them. He would load them into his pickup truck, bring them home, and spend hours taking them apart or trying to bring them back from the dead. There were dozens of lawnmowers under the carport beside the shed. Some were fixed. Most were taken apart for parts. Rust crawled over the metal frames, and the ones in the back sat there so long that they looked like they were slowly growing into one another. As a child, I thought the whole thing was fascinating. As an adult, I understand it was probably a tetanus nightmare waiting to happen. Grandpa's hands always smelled like motor oil. He carried a greasy rag almost everywhere and wiped his fingers even when they were already clean. He was hard of hearing, so he spoke loudly, and I had to speak loudly too if I wanted him to answer me. I loved him, but not in the same bright way I loved Grandma. Grandma was like a fire, warm and full of life. Grandpa was more like a street lamp far down the road. Quiet, dim, and a little distant, but still comforting when you saw him there. He never hugged much. Not me, not even Grandma. When I hugged him, he usually stood stiff and patted the top of my head. That was his way of showing love, I think. He did not know how to give more than that. Until I turned 10, my life felt simple and safe. My biggest worries were schoolwork, long division, and why I suddenly did not hate the girl with blonde curls in my class as much as I used to. Then Grandma died. The first death you experience as a child feels like a cruel joke, with no apology at the end. It is all bitterness, and there is no candy to make the taste go away. When my father came home from next door and sat me down, I saw tears in his eyes before he even spoke. He told me Grandma was with Jesus now. At first, I was angry. It seemed like a terrible lie. It was not funny to say she was gone. She would be mad at him for saying something like that. But she really was gone. The pain of it was worse than anything I had ever felt. It was like being kicked in the stomach so hard that I could not breathe. I would never run across the yard to her again. I would never smell tomatoes and clean laundry when she hugged me. I would never grow tall enough to catch her the way she always said I would. I cried until my chest hurt. Dad cried too and held me tight, but he did not smell like Grandma. Our clothes came from a dryer and smelled like fabric softener sheets, not sunshine and line-dried cotton. The funeral was awful. People kept saying she was in heaven, that she was in a better place, that she was not hurting anymore. I did not want to hear any of it. In my child's mind, it could not be a better place if I was not there with her. She had to be sad without me. She had to miss me. Other people smiled when they talked about happy memories, but I could only feel the empty place she had left behind. A neighbor named Angelica sat beside me during part of the service. She lived in the small house past my grandparents' place. She was pretty, blonde, soft-spoken, and always kind in a way that made grown-ups trust her. She told me she knew how grief felt because she had lost her husband. She said it would get easier with time. Part of me did not want it to get easier. I thought if the pain went away, it meant I loved Grandma less. Grandpa took her death differently. When a person loses the love of their life after so many years, something inside them dies too. His usual scowl turned into something empty and heavy. Over the next few months, he seemed to shrink. The life drained out of him slowly, like oil leaking from an old engine. No new lawn mowers appeared under the carport. The garden filled with weeds. Nobody hung clothes on the line anymore. My mother started washing Grandpa's clothes for him, and Dad dried them, folded them, and put them away in his drawers. I was not sure Grandpa changed very often. He began to smell like dust, old sweat, and a house that had forgotten how to breathe. Most days, he sat in his easy chair and stared at the television. Sometimes the television was not even on. Angelica helped more than anyone expected. My parents both worked, so she offered to check on Grandpa during the day. She would not accept money, even though she lived in a tiny house and did not seem rich. My parents were grateful. Grandpa did not seem to care one way or the other, but Angelica was given a spare key. She came in the mornings to make him breakfast because without her, he probably would have lived on canned stew and candy bars. One night, While getting ready for bed, I looked out my bedroom window toward the yard between our houses. That was when I saw the light. My grandparents' house was very old. Grandma used to say it had been standing since before the World Wars. The cellar had first been used to store vegetables and dry goods during winter. Later, during Prohibition, people had used it for making moonshine. By the time I was a child, it was just a storage space. But Grandma and I used to play down there. I would pretend to be a bootlegger hiding from the law, and she would pretend to be a police officer who could never quite catch me. There was one main cellar room and a smaller storage room off to the side. The smaller room had no light of its own. The only bulb in the cellar was a warm yellow one that made the stone walls glow just enough to look eerie. That night, the tiny cellar window was glowing gold. I stood half-dressed in my pajamas and stared. The glass was small, dirty, and wavy, with spiderwebs clinging to the edges. I could not see anyone inside. But the light switch was in the cellar, which meant someone had to be down there. I thought maybe Grandpa had gone downstairs for something, though even then it seemed strange. By morning, I forgot about it. But it happened again. Not every night. Sometimes the cellar window stayed dark, hidden under the shadows of trees. But every so often, that same golden light would appear. It would stay on for a while, sometimes for hours, then go out again. I never told my parents. It was just a light. There was nothing scary about a light turning on. At least that was what I told myself. 2 years passed. I still visited Grandpa with Dad. Grandpa spoke less and less. Sometimes he reached out and patted the top of my head with thin fingers. "Your Gram always said you'd be tall," he once said. Every time he said something like that, my throat hurt. His eyes would look wet and shiny, but he still would not hug me back when I hugged him. His skin had become loose, hanging over his bones, and his body felt smaller each time. That was when I learned death was not always sudden. Sometimes it moved slowly and took a person piece by piece. One night, my best friend Jacoby slept over. He had been to my house many times, and he loved ghost stories almost as much as he loved video games. We were playing in my room when he suddenly said, "What if it's your grandma's ghost?" I nearly dropped my controller. "What?" "The light," he said, nodding toward the window. "You said it turns on sometimes. Maybe it's your grandma saying hello." I tried to focus on the game, but his words stayed in my head. "Do you believe in ghosts?" Jacoby shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I don't not believe. You said you used to play with her down there. Maybe she just wants you to know she's watching over you." I said it was probably Grandpa checking for mice. My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. Jacoby looked away, and I felt bad. After a moment, I said, "I don't think I want it to be Grandma. I don't want her stuck here." Jacoby nodded slowly. "Yeah. Ghosts usually stay because they have unfinished business, right?" I did not answer. The thought hurt too much. What if Grandma had things she still wanted to do? Things she never got to say? What if she was trapped in that old cellar, alone? Jacoby looked at me carefully. "Do you want to go see?" I did not want to go into the cellar, but I did agree we could look through the window. Before we could even get our shoes on, the cellar light went off. We stood there waiting, but it did not come back. We returned to our sleeping bags and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, there were waffles, sunlight, and no more talk of ghosts. 2 things happened later that helped push everything into motion. First, Jacoby's parents went on a couple's retreat for their anniversary, and my parents agreed to let him stay with us for a whole week. I was thrilled. Second, I told Grandpa about the cellar light. It was a warm day, and Grandpa was sitting on the porch instead of in his chair inside. I could hear Mom and Angelica talking in the house. Angelica had been helping with Grandpa's laundry and had started fixing up Grandma's old garden. She wanted to plant flowers and vegetables again. Mom said it would be good for Grandpa to look outside and see something growing. Grandpa coughed, wet and rough, then said he missed Grandma on days like that. She would have loved working in the garden again. I nodded. I remembered helping her with a little trowel when I was small. Then I asked, "Grandpa, do you believe in ghosts?" He wrinkled his nose. "They make good stories. But no, I think when we die, we go on. Your grandma's in heaven." "I think so too," I said. "It's just, sometimes I see the light come on downstairs at night, through the cellar window." Grandpa shifted. "Could be bad wiring. Does it flicker?" "No, it stays on. Sometimes for a long time. 2 hours once." He sat up straighter. "Do you ever see anyone?" "No." I felt foolish as soon as I said the next part. I thought maybe it was Grandma. Maybe saying hello. Grandpa stared at me for a long moment. His eyes moved slowly toward the yard. Before he could answer, Mom came out and said it was time to go. We had to do laundry and shop for snacks Jacoby liked. I was embarrassed and asked if I could wait by the car with the keys. Mom, being careful as always, asked Angelica to watch me while I crossed the yard. Angelica walked beside me. As we passed the cellar window, I looked at it. "Your grandpa's a sweet man," she said. "He reminds me of my granddad." I did not know what to say, so I asked her, "Do you believe in ghosts?" She smiled. "I do, in a way. I like thinking that people we love can stay close to us. Maybe not haunting us, but leaving a piece of themselves behind." Then she asked why I wanted to know, and I told her about the light. Her smile faded, but not in a mean way. She looked sad. "Oh, honey," she said softly. "I think I can explain that. I'm sorry if it disappoints you, but your grandpa is probably the one turning the light on. Sometimes when older people get confused, especially at night, they do strange things. It's called sundowning. If he's going downstairs, I need to talk to your parents. He could fall and hurt himself." I did not want to believe Grandpa was getting that bad. I asked if he could do it and not remember. "I'm afraid so," Angelica said. She put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "It may be time for him to live somewhere with full-time care. Your parents and I can help, but he may need more than we can give." The idea of Grandpa being sent to a home made my stomach hurt. I pictured a sad, smelly place full of old people sitting in silence. I told myself my parents would never send him somewhere bad. Still, it felt like losing another piece of him. That evening, Jacoby arrived, and for a while, snacks and movies pushed the worry out of my mind. Mom and Dad watched a film with us before going to bed. Dad told us not to stay up too late because we had a whole week together. The moment their bedroom door closed, Jacoby turned to me. "So," he whispered, "do you want to check out the cellar?" I stared at him. "You still think there's a ghost?" He shrugged. "I just don't want to sleep yet. I want to do something." I told him what Angelica had said about Grandpa wandering around at night. Jacoby's excitement dimmed, but only for a few seconds. "Even if it's your grandpa," he said, "shouldn't we check? What if he falls down there?" I did not like the idea. I did not want to find Grandpa confused and strange in the dark. But if the light came on, maybe he really was going downstairs. Maybe he could get hurt. And maybe Angelica was wrong. Maybe it was not always Grandpa. Nervous but hungry for adventure, I gave in. Jacoby had brought a flashlight. He also insisted we make fake bodies out of pillows under our sleeping bags, though I knew my dad would never be fooled if he came in to check on us. We planned to be gone only a few minutes. We slipped out the back door into the cool night. The yard was full of cricket sounds. Jacoby moved ahead like he was in a spy movie, ducking behind bushes and tree shadows. I followed, half scared and half excited. When we reached Grandpa's house, Jacoby asked if I had a key. I did not, so I ran back inside and grabbed my dad's keys from his pants pocket. He always left them there. We unlocked the back door. The house smelled stale and quiet. Jacoby whispered, "Does your grandpa have a gun or anything?" "I wouldn't have agreed to this if he did," I whispered back. We moved through the kitchen. At night, it felt wrong without Grandma's tomatoes on the table or the smell of onions and soap in the air. The cellar door waited on the far side of the room. I opened it. Darkness lay below. "Wasn't the light on when we came out?" Jacoby whispered. "Yes." I turned on the cellar light from the switch near the door. The bulb clicked and hummed, filling the stairway with yellow light. "Maybe whoever was there already left," I said, though the words did not make me feel better. I took the flashlight and crept to the sitting room to check on Grandpa. I did not want to shine the beam in his face, so I aimed it low. I saw his shoes, socks, and the cuffs of his pants near the foot of his easy chair. He was sitting there, silent. I hurried back to Jacoby. "Grandpa's asleep in his chair. Let's go down." We descended into the cellar. At once I could tell the room had changed since the last time I had been there. Most of the old storage was gone or moved into the smaller back room. In the main space, there were coolers. Big ones. The kind people used for long camping trips or full days outside. Some were sealed with duct tape. I frowned. I haven't been down here in a long time. Grandpa doesn't like throwing things away, but I don't know what these are for. Jacoby walked toward the closest cooler. It came almost up to his stomach. Beside it was an old desk covered with gardening tools, duct tape, and a shovel with dirt still stuck to the blade. "Why are some of them taped shut?" he asked. I shook my head. Before I could stop him, Jacoby opened the nearest cooler. A sour, stale smell drifted out. He looked inside for only a few seconds. Then he shut the lid. "Hey, what is it?" I asked. He turned toward me, and the look on his face stole all the air from the room. His excitement was gone. His eyes were wide and empty with fear. His skin looked pale, and his dark hair seemed blacker under the yellow light. "We have to get out of here," he whispered. I wanted to ask what he had seen. Then I heard a footstep on the stairs. It was light, careful, someone trying not to make noise. Fear froze me in place, but Jacoby shoved me toward the small back room. He ran the other way, toward the coolers on the far side of the cellar. I stumbled into the little storage room and pulled the door almost shut. It squeaked, and I winced. The footsteps stopped. I crouched behind stacked boxes and tried to breathe without making a sound. The small room smelled like dust, cardboard, and old things that had belonged to Grandma. Gardening books, coffee mugs, trinkets she had packed away years ago. A thin bar of yellow light slipped through the gap under the door. That was not Grandpa walking down the stairs. And ghosts did not have footsteps. The steps came lower, slow and soft, like an animal moving through dirt. I could not see who it was. I could only watch the light shift under the door. Then the door to the little room creaked open. The beam of light widened. I pressed myself down behind the boxes. My whole body shook, and I was terrified the coffee mugs would rattle and give me away. I waited for the person to step inside. I waited to be found. Instead, the door closed. Then I heard the latch click. I was locked in. For a moment, I could not understand what had happened. The old window was above me, thick and dirty. It had never opened. Even if I broke it, the glass would cut me, and I was too big to fit through it anyway. Outside the door, the person moved around the main cellar. Their shadow crossed the yellow strip of light at the bottom. Jacoby was still out there. Maybe he could sneak away. Maybe he could run up the stairs and get help. Then I heard fast movement. A gasp. Jacoby cried out, "No, no, I won't tell anyone, please." His voice became muffled. I clamped both hands over my mouth to stop myself from sobbing. I tried the door handle, pulling and pushing as quietly as I could, but the latch held firm. Shadows thrashed under the door. I heard struggling. I prayed Jacoby would kick free, scream, run, do anything. But the sounds became slower. Then they stopped. All I could hear was heavy adult breathing. The person paced for a moment. Then came the wet click of a cooler opening, a grunt, a heavy thump. The cooler closed. Latches snapped. Tape ripped from a roll. My mind refused to make sense of it, but my body understood. Jacoby was in terrible danger. Maybe worse. I crouched in the corner and tried to think of a way out. I had no phone. My parents were asleep. If I screamed, the person outside the door would hear me first. Grandpa was upstairs, but he could barely hear anything. I pressed my face into my knees and prayed the person would not open the door again. Footsteps moved around the cellar, searching, looking for someone else, for me. Then the light clicked off. The footsteps went up the stairs. I stayed frozen. Maybe they were gone. Maybe they were getting something. Maybe they would come back with a knife or a hammer, something worse. Then a voice whispered, "Corey." I gasped. "Grandpa." "Hush," he said from the other side of the door. His voice was low and close, like his mouth was pressed to the wood. "Don't talk. Listen to me." "Grandpa, the lock." I said hush. His whisper was sharp enough to stop me. "There's a box near you with Gina's gardening tools. Some of my pliers should be in there. Find them. Quiet." I obeyed with shaking hands. I found the pliers buried under small tools and old packets of seeds. "Now look at the hinges," Grandpa whispered. "Can you see them?" The room was almost completely black. I shut my eyes for a few seconds, then opened them again. Slowly, I could make out the shape of the door. "Grandpa, please unlock it." "I can't," he said. There was something in his voice that sounded like tears. "Please, Corey, you have to take the pins out of the hinges. They're old. I never replaced them." I did not understand why he could not unlock the door. I wanted to ask if he was hurt, but I did not. I crawled to the door, found the lower hinge, and gripped the pin with the pliers. It was rusty and stuck. I wiggled it back and forth until it came free with a tiny metal shriek that sounded far too loud. "I got one," I whispered. "Good boy," Grandpa said. "Now the top one. But listen, they're upstairs. You can't just run past them. When the pin is out, the latch will still hold the door as long as the hinges stay together. When you're ready, you holler. They'll come running down. When they do, you hit that door as hard as you can." "I knock 'em down," I whispered. "That's right. You hit them with everything you got. Then run up the stairs, get outside, and scream for your mom and dad. Scream for anybody. Don't stop running." "What about you?" I asked. "Will they hurt you?" He was quiet for a second. "There's nothing they can do to me now," he said. Don't worry about me. Then softer, he added, I love you. I should have told you more. But I do. You can do this. I dragged a box over, climbed onto it so I could reach the top hinge. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the pliers. I pulled and twisted until the second pin came loose. The door shifted, heavier now, hanging wrong in its frame. I stepped back until I was under the little cellar window. Hide, Grandpa, I whispered. Then I screamed, help me! The reaction was instant. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. When the shadow appeared at the bottom of the door, I ran forward and slammed into it with all my strength. The door burst outward at an angle. It crashed into the person on the other side, and a high, sharp scream filled the cellar. I did not look closely. I scrambled over the crooked door, felt someone grab my arm, and screamed again as nails dug into my skin. I tore myself free. Blood ran down my arm, hot and bright. I reached the stairs and climbed on hands and feet, moving faster than I ever had in my life. I burst through the back door, slammed through the screen, and ran into the night. Help! I screamed. Help! They're after me! At 2 a.m, adults do not ignore a child screaming like that. Lights came on up and down the street. Doors opened. Voices shouted. My parents' house lit up first. I ran toward it, still screaming, terrified that someone would grab me from behind and drag me back into the dark. Then Mom and Dad were there. I had never been so grateful to smell laundry detergent. Neighbors rushed into Grandpa's house. Dad went with them. Mom wrapped me in a blanket on our porch and held me so tightly I could barely move. Police cars arrived with red and blue lights flashing over the houses. An ambulance came too. A paramedic cleaned the cuts on my arm and bandaged them while saying something about adrenaline. I was almost too tired to lift my head. Then they carried Jacoby out. He was alive. I broke down crying when I saw him. His neck was bruised where someone had tried to stop him from breathing. His lips were a little blue, and the paramedics had an oxygen mask over his face. But his eyes were open. When I reached for him, he moved his hand just enough to touch my arm. He was alive. He was going to live. Dad came over looking like he had aged 10 years in 15 minutes. What were you boys doing in the cellar? He asked. I was too exhausted and relieved to be scared of getting in trouble. The light kept coming on, I said. We wanted to see if it was Grandma's ghost. Dad rubbed his eyes and looked like he might fall apart. I asked who it was. Before he could answer, I saw a police car driving away. In the back seat was Angelica. Her blonde hair was wild. Her face was swollen and bruised from where the door had hit her. Her eyes found me through the window as the car passed. The kindness I had always seen there was gone. She looked at me with cold hatred. I stared after her. Mom held me tighter and kissed the top of my head. I don't understand, she whispered. She was always so kind. I did not understand either. That morning, she had spoken gently to me in the sun. That night, she had tried to kill my best friend. Dad told us we had to go to the hospital with Jacoby and answer questions. Mom rode in the ambulance with him. Dad and I went in a police car. I was too numb to feel excited about it. During the ride, I suddenly remembered. Dad, I said, was Grandpa okay? Dad went still. He was down there with me, I said. He told me how to get out. The officer looked in the rearview mirror. Dad turned his head slowly. What do you mean, Corey? He asked. You saw your grandpa? No, I said. I heard him. After Angelica went upstairs, he told me to take the pins out of the hinges. He told me to run and scream. Is he okay? Dad looked at me, but not directly. It was like if he looked straight into my eyes, he would break. Corey, he said softly, your grandpa passed away this afternoon. I was not angry this time. I was only confused. No, I said. I heard him. I know I did. I wouldn't have known what to do if he hadn't told me. Dad nodded faintly, but his face had gone pale. Later, after the police questioned us, I learned what had happened. Grandpa had died about 30 minutes after Mom and I left to buy snacks. Angelica had suffocated him. His body had been placed back in his chair as if he had simply passed away in his sleep. Because he was old and sick, no one might have questioned it if the police had not searched the house that night. They found signs on one of the pillows. Angelica pleaded not guilty, but I do not think anyone believed her. I also learned what had been inside the coolers. The police said there were 8 victims, maybe more. One was Angelica's former husband. Another was the woman he had cheated on her with. Maybe that was where it started. Maybe that was only what made her realize she liked it. Jacoby never talked about what he saw in the cooler. He only told me he woke up inside one, gasping for air, surrounded by things he refused to describe. I never asked him to. The cellar light turned on one last time after I came home from the hospital and the police station. I sat by my bedroom window and watched it glow. This time, I was not afraid. The golden light filled the little dirty window, and the smell of motor oil and talcum powder drifted around me. She didn't have unfinished business, Grandpa's voice said. That's why she wasn't here. I did not turn around. I was scared that if I looked, the moment would break. Is she okay? I whispered. Is everything okay there? Everything's all right, he said. Gina misses you. She loves you and your parents very much. Tears ran down my face. I wiped them away with both hands, but more came. So you had unfinished business? I asked. Grandpa was quiet for a moment. Just one thing. Then warmth wrapped around me. I stood with my eyes closed and hugged something that was not exactly a body. It was not flesh and bone. It felt like breath made solid, like light shaped into arms. But it was safe. It was good. It smelled like oil, talcum powder, and home. I love you, Corey, Grandpa said. I love your parents, too. We'll see you again, but not for a long while. Something like a whiskery kiss touched the top of my head. I held on as long as I could. I love you too, Grandpa, I whispered. With one soft breath, he was gone. Across the yard, the cellar light went dark. It never turned on again. Story 4. My friend and I had a habit that probably sounded strange to most people. Whenever we got bored late at night, we would drive to this park and sit there for a while. It had become one of those things we did without thinking much about it. Some people went to diners. Some people sat in parking lots. Some people stayed home and watched movies. We went to the park. It was not a small park either. It was not the kind of place with one slide, 2 benches, and a little patch of grass. This park was huge. It had a long walking and biking trail that went around most of the area, and there was a wide river running through the middle of it. During the day, it was actually a really nice place. Families came there with their kids. People walked their dogs along the trail. Cyclists passed by in bright clothes and helmets. Couples sat near the water, and sometimes people brought food and had little picnics under the trees. In the daylight, the park felt open and peaceful. You could see everything clearly. The water looked calm, the trees looked beautiful, and the whole place felt safe enough. But at night, it became something completely different. At night, the same trees that looked nice during the day turned into dark shapes leaning over the paths. The river stopped looking peaceful and started looking deep and strange. The walking trail disappeared into shadows, and every sound seemed louder than it should have been. A branch moving in the wind could sound like footsteps. A bird taking off from a tree could sound like someone running through the leaves. Even the silence felt heavy. The night this happened was darker than usual. I remember that clearly. It was not just a normal night. It was pitch black in the part of the park where we were sitting. There were no lights close to our bench. The nearest parking lot lights were far behind us, and they barely reached the trees. The only real light came from our phones and from the moon shining on the river. The moonlight reflected off the water in a strange way. The surface looked almost white, like someone had poured milk across it. Everything around the river was swallowed by darkness. We were sitting on our usual bench, the one beside the water. We had been there many times before. It was far enough from the main path that people usually did not bother us, but close enough to the river that we could hear the water moving. We were smoking, talking about random things, and laughing about nothing important. After a while, like always, we ran out of things to say, and both ended up scrolling through our phones. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The only sounds were the river, the wind moving through the trees, and the quiet tapping of our fingers on our phone screens. Then I looked up. I do not know why I did it. Maybe my eyes were tired from staring at my phone. Maybe I heard something small in the dark. Or maybe some part of me suddenly noticed just how far away we were from everything. But when I looked around, I realized how dark it really was. The trees were thick behind us. The trail was somewhere back there, but I could not see it. The ground beyond our bench disappeared into blackness. Even the shapes of the bushes were hard to make out. It felt like the darkness was pressing in around us. I turned to my friend and said, "Do you think there could be people watching us right now?" He looked up from his phone. At first he seemed confused, like he had not heard me correctly. "What do you mean?" he asked. I looked past him toward the trees. "I don't know. It's just really dark. What if someone is standing out there somewhere and we can't see them? Like, what if somebody is just watching us from behind those trees?" He stared at me for a second and gave a small laugh. "Why would someone be watching us?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe some weird person. Or ghosts or something." That made him laugh more. He leaned back on the bench and shook his head. "Nah," he said. "It's too dark for anyone to see us. And ghosts aren't real." As soon as he said that, I felt uncomfortable. I know it sounds stupid now, but in that moment, sitting in the dark beside that river, I really did not like hearing him say it. It felt too confident, too careless, like he was saying something he should not have said out loud. I immediately told him, "Don't say that." He looked amused. "Say what?" "Don't say ghosts aren't real. Don't jinx us." He laughed even harder. "You're serious?" "I'm just saying," I told him. "Don't mess around." But that only made him want to mess around more. Beside our bench was an old tree with long branches hanging down. The branches were low enough that the leaves almost touched us when the wind moved them. Sometimes, if we sat too close, the leaves would brush against our shoulders or the backs of our heads. During the day, it was just a tree. But that night, in that darkness, it looked like something was hanging over us. My friend stood up and walked over to the branches. He grabbed a handful of leaves and started slapping them away from himself. "No ghost can touch me," he said, laughing. I told him to stop being stupid. He ignored me and kept doing it. He started smacking the branches harder, making the leaves shake and rustle. The sound seemed loud in the quiet park. The branches bounced back and forth, and shadows moved across the ground. "Come on," he said. "Look, nothing's happening." I told him again to stop, but then he started laughing at me, saying I was scared. I did not want to admit that I was, so after a few seconds I stood up too. I joined him. We both stood there like idiots, smacking the hanging leaves and joking around. We were laughing and acting like kids, trying to scare each other and then laughing even more when nothing happened. At the time, it felt harmless. It was just stupid late-night behavior. We were bored, and we were trying to make the night feel less creepy. Looking back now, I really wish we had never touched those branches. After that, we sat back down. The mood felt normal again for a little while. We talked some more, checked our phones again, and tried to act like we had not been creeped out at all. But I remember that the park felt a little different after that. I cannot explain it exactly. Nothing obvious changed. The river was still there. The trees were still moving in the wind. My friend was still joking around. But the air felt heavier. It felt like the darkness around us had become aware of us. About 20 minutes later, we decided to leave. It was getting late, and neither of us had any real reason to stay. We put out our cigarettes, grabbed our things, and walked back toward his car. I remember looking over my shoulder once as we left the bench. I could not see anything behind us except the pale river and the black line of trees. Nothing followed us. Nothing moved. At least, nothing that I could see. We got into his car, and for a few minutes, everything felt normal. The doors locked. The engine started. The headlights came on, cutting through the dark road ahead of us. My friend pulled away from the parking area and started driving toward the exit. The exit road in that park is long and narrow. Trees stand on both sides, and at night, there is barely any traffic. Once you leave the main parking area, you can go a while without seeing another car. It feels like the road is taking longer than it should. Like the park does not really want to let you out. We were quiet at first. I was looking out the window, watching the trees pass by in the headlights. My friend had one hand on the steering wheel and the other near the gear shift. The radio was off. The only sounds were the engine and the tires moving over the road. Then we heard it. Bang. The sound came from the trunk. It was not a small noise. It was not the kind of soft rattle a car makes when something loose rolls around in the back. It was not a bump in the road. It was a violent crash, sharp and heavy, like somebody had punched the inside of the trunk as hard as they could. My whole body jumped. For half a second, neither of us moved. Then I turned toward my friend and gave a nervous laugh. "Ha ha ha ha," I said. "Very funny." He looked at me like he had no idea what I was talking about. "What?" "The trunk," I said. His expression changed right away. The smile left his face. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and then back to the road. "I swear to God," he said, "that wasn't me." The way he said it made my stomach drop. He was not joking. He was not trying to scare me. He looked genuinely confused, and worse than that, he looked scared. A cold feeling moved through my body. It started in my chest and spread down my arms. I turned and looked toward the back of the car, even though I knew I could not see into the trunk from inside. The back seat was empty. The car suddenly felt too small, like something was close to us but hidden just out of sight. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then the same thought hit both of us at almost the same time. What if somebody was actually in the trunk? It sounded impossible, but the sound had been too real to ignore. Maybe someone had somehow climbed in before we got to the car. Maybe someone had been hiding near the parking area. Maybe some stranger had followed us from the bench and slipped into the trunk while we were not paying attention. My friend slowed the car down. We both looked around through the windows. The road was empty. The trees were dark and still. There were no headlights behind us, and no people walking nearby. He pulled over onto the side of the exit road. For a moment, we just sat there. The engine was still running. The headlights shone down the empty road. I could hear my own breathing, and it sounded too loud. My friend kept a baseball bat in his car. He reached behind his seat and grabbed it. He held it tightly with both hands, then opened his door. I did not want to get out, but I also did not want to stay inside alone. So I got out too and followed him, staying a few steps behind. The night air felt colder than before. The trees on both sides of the road seemed to lean toward us. Every sound made me flinch. I could hear the soft clicking of the car engine, the faint sound of the river somewhere far away, and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My friend moved slowly toward the trunk with the bat raised slightly. He looked back at me once, and I could see in his face that he was hoping I would say something like, "Forget it. Let's just go." But I did not say anything. He reached the trunk. For 1 second, he stood there without moving. Then he unlocked it and lifted it open. Nothing. The trunk was completely empty. There were no bags inside, no tools, no loose bottles, no boxes. Nothing that could have shifted around. Nothing that could have hit the inside of the trunk. There was not even a jacket or a spare tire cover, out of place. We both just stood there, staring into the empty space. I did not know what to say. My friend lowered the bat a little, but he did not put it down. He leaned closer, like he expected something to appear if he looked hard enough. I looked under the edges of the trunk, behind the liner, anywhere something could have been hiding. But there was nothing. After a while, my friend shut the trunk. We stood outside the car for another moment, listening. There was no second bang, no movement, no voice, nothing. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it had to be something mechanical. Maybe something underneath the car had shifted. Maybe the trunk latch had snapped into place in a strange way. Maybe we had hit a bump in the road and somehow it made that sound. Neither of us truly believed any of those explanations, but they were better than having no explanation at all. We got back in the car. This time, my friend drove faster. Neither of us joked anymore. Neither of us mentioned ghosts or branches of the park. We just sat there in silence until we finally left the park and reached the normal streets again. He drove me back to his house because my own car was parked there. When we arrived, I got out quickly. I wanted to say something about what had happened, but I did not know what. He looked tired and pale under the porch light. "Text me when you get home," he said. I said I would. Then I got into my car and started driving home. At first, I was only thinking about the trunk. I kept replaying the sound in my head. The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. It had sounded exactly like someone hitting from inside. Not outside. Not underneath. Inside. I tried to tell myself cars make weird sounds. I tried to tell myself we were already creeped out, so our minds made it worse than it was, but I could not make myself believe it. A few minutes later, I stopped at an intersection, not far from my house. The street was quiet. Most of the houses had their lights off. It was close to 11 at night, and there were hardly any cars around. I sat at the red light, tapping my fingers against the steering wheel, waiting for it to change. That was when I saw her. An old woman was standing on the footpath. She was on the corner under the weak glow of a streetlight. She had one of those walkers with a built-in seat, the kind elderly people use when they have trouble walking. Her hands were resting on the handles. She wore a long gray coat that hung almost to her ankles. Her shoes were dark, and she had a beige headscarf wrapped tightly around her head. Her back was badly hunched, like she had spent years bent forward. She was not walking. She was not crossing the street. She was just standing there. Something about her made me uneasy right away. It was not only because she was old and alone at that time of night. It was the way she stood so still. Most people shift their weight or look around or move their hands. She did none of that. She looked like she had been placed there. I stared at her for a few seconds. Then the light changed. I drove away. I told myself it was none of my business. Maybe she lived nearby. Maybe she had stepped outside for air. Maybe she was waiting for someone to pick her up. Strange, yes, but not impossible. Still, I kept thinking about her as I drove. A few minutes later, I glanced out my passenger window. My stomach dropped. The same old woman was standing there. Not a woman who looked similar. The same woman. Same long gray coat. Same beige headscarf. Same walker with the seat. Same dark shoes. Same hunched back. She was standing on the footpath beside a different street, several blocks away from where I had first seen her. For a second, my mind could not understand what I was seeing. I turned my head quickly, but I had already passed her. My eyes went to the rearview mirror. I could see the road behind me, but the street was dark, and she was gone from view. I immediately started trying to explain it. Maybe it was another old woman dressed the same way. Maybe I had mistaken her for someone else. Maybe the first woman had not been as far back as I thought. Maybe there was some shortcut through side streets, and somehow she had gotten ahead of me. But even while I thought those things, I knew they did not make sense. I was driving. She could barely stand upright. She was using a walker. There was no possible way she could have moved that fast. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I could feel them starting to shake. My mouth went dry. I kept looking in my mirrors, even though I did not know what I expected to see. I had the horrible feeling that something was wrong in a way I could not understand. Really wrong. I sped up. I just wanted to get home. I wanted to park my car, lock my door, and pretend the whole night had been nothing but fear and imagination. I wanted to be somewhere bright, somewhere with walls around me. About a minute later, I reached a roundabout less than a street away from my house. My headlights swept across the road as I slowed down. And then I saw her again. She was standing beside the roundabout, waiting. The exact same woman, same coat, same headscarf, same walker, same bent back. Only this time, she was not looking down. She was looking directly at me. I still remember her face more clearly than I want to. Her skin was pale in the headlights. Her face was full of deep wrinkles, the kind that made shadows under her eyes and around her mouth. Her cheeks looked thin, and her headscarf made her face seem even smaller. But the worst part was her smile. It was not a normal smile. It was too wide, too slow, too deliberate. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they know something you do not. Like she had been waiting for me the whole time. Like she knew exactly where I would be and when I would arrive. For 1 second, I could not breathe. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. My vision seemed to narrow, like the road and the trees and the houses around me were all disappearing, leaving only her face in the headlights. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get away from her. I pressed my foot down hard on the accelerator. The car shot forward. I do not remember much of the drive after that. I know I turned onto my street. I know I reached my driveway. I know I parked badly, half crooked, with the front of the car too close to the garage. But I do not remember actually doing any of it. It felt like my body was moving by itself. I practically fell out of the car. I ran to the front door so fast I dropped my keys once on the porch. I picked them up with shaking hands, unlocked the door, rushed inside, and locked it behind me. Then I checked the lock again. Then I locked the deadbolt. Then I went to the back door and checked that too. After that, I ran to my room. I did not turn on many lights because I was afraid to look out the windows and see her standing there. I know that sounds backward. Most people would turn every light on. But I could not stand the thought of lighting up the inside of my house while the outside stayed dark. It would have made me feel exposed. I sat on my bed and stared at my bedroom door. Every little noise made me jump. The house settled, and I thought it was a footstep. The wind touched the window, and I thought someone was tapping. A car passed outside, and I held my breath until the sound faded away. Every shadow looked wrong. I kept picturing the old woman standing at the roundabout, smiling at me. Then I pictured her moving slowly down my street with that walker. I imagined the soft scrape of it on the pavement. I imagined her stopping in front of my house. I imagined her looking up at my bedroom window. At some point, I checked my phone. My friend had texted me asking if I got home. I typed back that I did. I wanted to tell him everything right then, but I could not make myself type it. I was scared that writing it down would make it more real. So I just sat there, staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. At least nothing I saw. I do not remember falling asleep. I only remember waking up the next morning, still in my clothes, exhausted, with my phone beside me and my bedroom light still on. In daylight, everything felt a little less real. The fear was still there, but it was quieter. Morning has a way of making nighttime things feel impossible. I made myself coffee. I looked out the window and saw normal people walking dogs, cars driving by, and sunlight on the street. There was no old woman, no walker, no gray coat. I tried to come up with explanations. Maybe the sound in the trunk had nothing to do with anything. Maybe it really was a mechanical problem. Maybe the old woman was just a coincidence. Maybe there had been more than one elderly woman out that night wearing similar clothes. Maybe I had been tired. Maybe my mind had been scared because of what happened in the park, and it started connecting things that were not connected. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But one part of the night would not leave me alone. The way she kept appearing ahead of me. The way she was at the intersection, then farther down the road, then at the roundabout near my house. The way she looked at me the last time, like she had known exactly where I was going. The next day, I finally called my friend. At first, we talked about the trunk. He still sounded shaken by it. He said he had checked his car again in the morning and found nothing. No dent, no loose panel, nothing broken, nothing in the trunk, nothing under the car that could explain the sound. Then I told him there was something else. I started telling him about the drive home. I told him I had stopped at an intersection and seen an old woman standing on the footpath. I had not even finished explaining the whole thing when he suddenly interrupted me. His voice had changed. It sounded tight and nervous. He asked me one question. Was she wearing a gray coat and a beige headscarf? I froze. For a few seconds, I could not speak. I had never told him what she was wearing. I had not mentioned the gray coat. I had not mentioned the headscarf. I had not described the walker or the way she stood. I had only said I saw an old woman. When I finally asked him how he knew that, he did not answer right away. Then he told me he had seen her too. Not once. More than once. After he dropped me off and drove back from his house, he had gone inside for a few minutes. He said he tried to calm down, but the noise from the trunk kept bothering him. He could not stop thinking about it. Later, when he looked out one of the front windows, he saw an old woman standing on the sidewalk across from his house. She had a walker. She was wearing a long gray coat. And she had a beige headscarf wrapped around her head. At first, he thought it was just some old lady from the neighborhood. But then she lifted her head and looked directly at his window. And she smiled. He said he shut the curtains right away. He did not sleep much that night either. After he told me that, neither of us knew what to say. We stayed on the phone for a while, mostly silent. I think both of us were hoping the other person would come up with some normal explanation, but neither of us could. I asked him if he thought it had something to do with the park. He did not answer for a moment. Then he said, I think it started when we messed with that tree. I want to tell him that was ridiculous. I wanted to laugh and say we were acting crazy, but I could not. Because deep down, I had been thinking the same thing. That tree, those hanging branches, the way we had slapped them and joked about ghosts, the way we had laughed in the dark like nothing out there could hear us. Maybe nothing happened right away because whatever was there waited until we left. Maybe the bang in the trunk was the first warning. Maybe the old woman was the second. Or maybe she had been there the whole time, standing somewhere in the darkness beyond the bench, watching us while we joked and laughed and dared things we did not understand. I do not know what she was. I do not know if she was a ghost or something else, or if there is some simple answer that I will never find. I only know what I heard, what I saw, and what my friend saw too. To this day, we do not talk much about that night. Sometimes one of us will almost bring it up, and then the conversation dies. We both know what happened, but saying it out loud still feels wrong. Neither of us has gone back to that park since. Not during the day. Not at night. And we never will.